Welcome to my channel. My name is Kendra Buga and I love to paint with watercolor and gouache. Today my art video log is going to combine a recent hike that I took with my family along with a watercolor that I started while we were out on that hike. We had a beautiful day last Saturday, and so we went to a hidden trail that we stumbled upon a couple of years ago. I will share the map with you so that you can also find this hidden gem that we found along the Sandy River in Portland. The first couple of minutes shares video footage from our hike, and then we jump right into the painting part of this video. If you want, you can skip ahead using the chapters feature in my description below. Okay, let's go hiking.
Okay, here's a map that I pulled from where we went hiking. The parking area is just off the side of the road on Southeast Gordon Creek Road, just after Springdale. And we went down the hike, which is the orange, down to the waterfall, and the little red piece goes down to the Sandy River. So it's way out there. We're on the edge of a cliff. And when you look up the cliff, all the colors of the eroding soil and all those tree roots hanging on. So neat. Going under? Yeah. All right. Going under. This is only March 18th. The first warm day. So nice.
Wasn't that a beautiful hike? Before we go back into my studio and I show you the painting that I'm working on, I want to show you the kit that I took with me hiking this time. This is the first time that I've tried using this very, very small kit. This is a little bag. It's only 5 inches by 9 inches, and I sewed it myself. It has little cam snaps to snap at the top, like that. And so I just put in a very minimal kit, and I just threw some things in here without too much thought. But I just wanted to make it very tiny so that I could have a little something just in case I had time to sit down and sketch. So here's what I took. I took these Conte a Paris, or maybe they're called Conte a Paris, sketching crayons. They look like this. Or at least these are the pigments that I chose. These are a blend of natural pigments, kaolin clay, and graphite. And it's my first time to try this, and I wasn't sure how it would mix with watercolor later on, but you'll get to see in the video how it does. I'm actually quite pleased with that. They're fun to sketch with. Yeah, and just these colors were fun to sketch with. There's a whole variety and assortment of colors that you can buy. And like I said, this is my first time to try this. Then I took a set of 24 watercolor pencils. This is probably overkill. I think if I did this again, I wouldn't take the whole set. I would probably take just a few colors that match the season. And finally, I took a little concertina book that I made by just folding up a piece of watercolor paper. This is an Arches cold press 140-pound piece of paper that I just cut. You can see the edge that wasn't cut, that's the edge of the paper, and then the edge that I cut. And it's probably about 3 inches by 6 inches. And how many panels do I have? 2, 4, 6, 8 panels. And you can see, of course, I used 4 panels, 2 pictures. So that's what I took. It really packed very well, and I think this was a good starting point. I'll have some variations as I go along in the spring and summer this year, though. All right, let's get into it.
All right, here we are in the painting part of this watercolor video log. So what you can see here is the drawings that I made while we were on site. Like I said before, I was using I think they're pronounced Conte putty sketching crayons, and some pencils, some color pencils. And what I want to do now, or what I want to do in this video, is to start applying some watercolors. I am using a palette that's rather limited. The colors that I like right at this moment are New Gamboge. I use the Winsor & Newton. It has 2 pigments, which is important for a little bit more advanced watercolorists understanding pigments. But the Winsor & Newton paint, well, actually all of the New Gamboge paints are now 2 pigment paints. They used to be single pigments, but the auto industry stopped using this in their auto painting, and so the painters had to go to a 2 pigment color. So you can see right here how it's going down not very smoothly. See how crumbly it looks? This is what I sort of like about having that, those sketching crayons down first. And in the specific area that I'm painting right here, there was a whole lot of that white crayon, that white sketching crayon. So there's a lot of white debris that my paintbrush is picking up. You can see it right on the end of my brush right there. And I'm going to swish it out in a second. The water will turn all white. So what I was doing is I was going in with some cerulean, but then that didn't seem to pump it enough for the water. So I started to go in with some Prussian blue. Both of those that I use are M-gram colors because they're single pigment colors. And that started to pump it up a little bit so that I could get a bit of that blue color. The interesting thing is when you look at the actual photograph, which comes up later in this video, the water doesn't really look blue. But one thing I remember my watercolor teacher telling me is that no matter how green or brown water looks in real life, if you don't drop some blues in there, it'll never look like water. So you can see I'm going in rather heavy with the Prussian blue right here. And I'm going heavier with the darker color right under those rocks because of course there's a shadow right at the base of those rocks, or right where those rocks meet the water. That's the darkest place. And so that's why I use that dark crayon to accent the bottom part of each of those rocks. I liked the perspective of this sort of side stream of the Sandy River that goes back, and the rocks get smaller and the stream, appears to get smaller. It's really, of course, on the edge of the actual river. The Sandy River goes from Mount Hood all the way down to the Columbia River, and of course then on out to the Pacific Ocean. We've experienced the Sandy River in multiple places. There's a lot of hikes along the Sandy. So I let that dry, and then I come back, and then I wanted to bump up the colors of the grasses and the mosses. So you see that palette that I have that is just the top of a yogurt container, and I'm mixing some greens with that New Gamboge and cerulean, spraying it with a little bit of water. And what I wanted to get was some really light greens to start to go in over the top of those colored pencils. there's a waxy sort of a texture to the pencils and to the sketching crayons, and so it's the paint you can see is sitting on the top of the paper quite a bit longer than it usually would. On a blank sheet, it would just drop down into the paper really fast, but with this other medium on top or below, sketched first, it changes the dynamic, and it's really nice for this kind of a painting where you want, or at least I wanted, a lot of texture, because there is a lot of texture in the mosses that are on top of the rock and in the water and on the tree limbs. There's just so much texture. So I wanted to play that up. Okay, so I'm playing this video at real time, which I know is super unusual for YouTube. I'm going to be playing it at real time for quite a while until the very last segment when I put it at double time. I think it's important sometimes to see somebody else painting in real time, because otherwise you get the impression that it happens so fast. And really it doesn't, because there's so many pauses in between even my painting here where I let it dry, which is a really essential part of watercolor painting. If you don't let your paints dry, then you're going to have mud. And so you'll see at some point where I move from my river scene over to my tree scene, and I kind of bump back and forth while I'm waiting for one to dry, paint on the other, and I go back and forth, which is a really nice way to paint if you want to keep moving and keep painting. But while you're watching this, I wanted to talk to you about another book. I know, sometimes this feels like a book video log instead of an art video log, given how many books I recommend. Seems like every video I'm pulling up another book. But this one is really sweet. It is a book called The Natural World of Winnie the Pooh, and the subtitle is A Walk Through the Forest That Inspired the 100-Acre Wood, and it's by a woman named Catherine Alto. I'll link it in the description, and probably I'll put a picture at the very end of this video so that you can see it. I've checked this book out from the library a couple of times, and I was just looking at it today, and when I'm out on site painting like what you're seeing right here, well, when I'm just drawing a sketch, usually not painting outside, I imagine myself as E.H. Shepard making studies of the landscape for like some kind of stories. Because if you read this book and look through the pictures, that's what he did. He went out to a local park and he just took inspiration from all of the trees and little bridges and little things that were going on in that park. And there are a lot of parks and places in Portland, Oregon that look just like this, and I could imagine stories happening there as well. So I want to read you a little piece of it while you watch me paint. Now that I'm painting onto this tree, what I'm doing is I'm taking black. There's a black color, ivory black. It's an engram color, and it's very diluted. And also it's getting interrupted by the coloring, what are those called? Sketching crayons. So anyway, here's the part that I wanted to read to you from page 11. It says, Winnie the Pooh is loyal and compassionate, playfully composing impromptu poetry and hums, and visiting friends for a smackerel of something. Like a 4, 5, or 6-year-old, he is a magical thinker. If I plant a honeycomb outside my house, then it will grow up into a beehive. This and other admirable traits have inspired a plethora of books on philosophy, psychology, and literary criticism, including The Tao of Pooh, Pooh and the Philosophers, Pooh and the Psychologists, and Postmodern Pooh. We know the bear's other friends as well. His best friend, Piglet, is nervous and timid, just a little fellow who often overcomes his fears at Pooh's side. And then there is Rabbit, who personifies the person of action. He is the best speller among the animals of the 100-acre wood, and he likes to organize, take charge, and write bureaucratic resolutions. Out of earshot, Rabbit has said, "Owl, you and I have brains. The others have fluff. If there's any thinking to be done in this forest, and when I say thinking, I mean thinking, you and I must do it." Of course, we readers know Owl cannot even spell his own name, note W-O-L, and especially not happy birthday. Still, he is regarded as the wisest of animals of the 100-acre wood because he can use long words and is, well, long-winded. Dear Conga is maternal and loving, while her little one, Rue, is always eager to try new things and test Mother's boundaries. "I can swim," says Rue. "I fell into the river and I swimmed." If a person is feeling a bit like Eeyore, everybody knows this means gloom and pessimism have settled in. Eeyore's counterpart is the effervescent Tigger. Introduced in the second book, The House at Pooh Corner, Tigger is the most exuberant of the forest animals, but he has issues with self-restraint and controlling his bounce. "I didn't bounce, I coughed," he says when accused of pushing Eeyore into the stream during a novel game of Pooh Sticks. And then they go on to Christopher Robin. Anyway, it's a really delightful book. It has pictures of the real place and all of E.H. Shepard's illustrations, and of course it gives a lot of background on A.A. Milne as well. So I highly recommend taking a look at it. Hopefully you can find it at your library, but if not, you can pick it up on Amazon or your local bookstore. So while I was painting this tree, I didn't have my reference photo in front of me, and so I was just sort of making things up, and I was just drawing in tree branches, just the way that I've observed tree branches grow for this kind of a tree that grows down by the river. I added some of those deeper red colors. That's like a Pyrrole red that's mixed with the New Gamboge to make that orange color. And you see how I just let that glob of orangey red just sit right there on the top. And you'll see a little bit later on how it looks when it finally sinks in. I didn't dab it out or anything. I just let it sit there until it naturally sunk in. This pencil, I believe, is just the colored pencil. I don't think I used any watercolor pencils in these sketches. I really wanted to try that experiment of using the sketching crayons and just the colored pencils and see how they play with watercolors. Now here I'm bumping up the roots. I noticed that this tree, the tree that I was drawing a second ago on the roots, that the roots are almost like the soil underneath those roots is almost completely washed away, and so it just appears to sort of hover over the water. And so in a little bit you'll see that all of those black colors really get bumped up. This is the kind of thing that I find quite interesting about painting on location, is the observation that comes with it. I see things. This is a Stabilo pencil, so it's a water-soluble pencil, just like a watercolor pencil. It's my new favorite. This Stabilo pencil is, I've just only used it for a couple weeks now, but it really has a nice feeling, a good line, and it really dissolves in water very beautifully. So anyway, that observation that comes from painting on location or even using a photograph. But when you're painting on location, you can look the other way. You can look in a different direction, and you can really decide what you want in your painting and not in your painting. Whereas I feel more constrained with the photograph in the studio than I do when I'm on location. Okay, we're coming up right up to the end of this video for today. That's how I left it. And here comes a picture of the tree. Are you surprised? That's the tree I was drawing. And here is the little piece of riverbank that I was drawing all those rocks from. Here's what my husband was doing as I was sketching. And here's what one of my twins was doing while I was sketching. We found this plaque over by the waterfall, this dedicated to Jean Duckerling. It's very sweet, and I'm going to show you a picture of the waterfall. Okay, and there is the book that I'm recommending that you take a look at. Beautiful book. Thank you for staying with me today until the very end. I will be back next Friday with a fresh video. Bye.